bit.
1.2 billion. You had 1 in 1.2 billion chance of even being alive. And if you want to be pessimistic, you can say 1 in 40 million chance of being alive. What do I mean by that? Well, 40 million swimmers, up to 1.2 billion swimmers, aimed to get to that egg, and only one of them made it. And here you are. When you look at all the statistics, you have 78 organs, 11 systems, and you think you're not unique. Well, think of it this way. When you take 6 numbers, like they play the lottery game, there is 1 in 39 million chance in the UK you win the UK lottery. So 1 in 40 million. And to win the Euro lottery, it's 1 in 140 million. Now, just 1 in 140 million chance. Now, just think about it. 78 organs, so 78 different numbers, and they all operate differently to everybody else. 78 organs, 11 different systems. When you take all that into consideration, the fact that you are made out of at least 30 trillion cells and over 30 trillion other cells, bacteria cells, fungal cells, are also part of who you are. And you are trying to tell me you are not special? My name is Haroon Rabbani, and you are listening to and watching the Natural Medicine Podcast. And I'm joined with by my co-host, Dr. Ashish Paul. Ashish, welcome to our episode.
Hi, Harun. Good evening, everyone who might watch us live or later if you are catching us on replay. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Harun.
So one of the most fundamental questions that I've been asking in my head is, having worked in the medical industry for a number of years, is why is it that everybody's treated the same? Why is it that and this is statistics, this is scientific stats, right? Your fingerprints, there's nobody on the planet like you.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should be treated differently because of that. But the statistics show that there is 1 in 420 billion chance that there is a second person like you. So the fact that you even exist is a miracle. So in this episode, one of the foundations of understanding who you are body constitution. And this is coming from Ayurvedic medicine. Do you want to explain what body constitution is, since you're an Ayurvedic doctor?
Absolutely. That just amazes me. All those numbers that you have just, quoted. It's just, and that's why it fascinates me about the body, the human body. It's just such a masterpiece of coordination and how things work together in tandem. It's just brilliant. And Ayurvedic medicine, which is the oldest medicinal system and healthcare system in the world, it talks about the subjectivity of human body and human mind. There is no other person, you've already said that, there is no other person on the planet who has got your system as it is. Your body, your mind, your spirit, your emotions, your skill set, your background, your history, your parents' genetic composition. So you are absolutely unique in terms of how your body is represented. And the systems that you have mentioned, all the organs, how they behave, how they process food, how you process thoughts in your mind, that is very unique to you. And that is the basis of natural medicine. That is the basis of Ayurvedic medicine. We start from this. So this is the foundation, as you said, is the fundamentals of Ayurvedic medicine, is to find out who you are as a person. How do you we have broad categorizations, but categorizations are not to put you in a box. It's just to understand your weaknesses and your strengths.
It's taking a laser-like approach, but there's also one very important element to understand, is that the modern medicine has created something called germ theory. Germ theory is, of course, in essence, saying all sickness is due to germs. It's due to things outside of you, which and it has its validity for sure. there's been many good things arising, as including hygiene, because once upon a time doctors would go and operate on dead bodies, and then they'll go and help mothers give birth, go through labor, and they're wondering why so many kids were dying at birth and so many others were dying at birth. So just washing their hands made a difference. So the germ theory has its validity, but the problem is, of course, it takes away responsibility for the individual. And the approach we're really talking about is the approaches of rather than treat the disease, is to treat the person. In other words, get the person healthy enough so that their immune system, which, I mean, come on, after millions of years of evolution, our bodies have brought us to where we are. We live so much more longer, and we're capable of inventing and creating all this kind of stuff. You think our immune system, is just a simple mechanistic thing? It isn't. So
No.
the whole concept of natural medicine is to understand that, hold on, my body is following Mother Nature's path. It's been working in tandem, in collaboration for millions of years, not mine, the species, millions of years. So maybe there's stuff out there that is perhaps maybe we want to look at, ancient wisdom. Ayurvedic medicine, which is your area of specialty, goes back, what, at least how many years?
Yeah, it started with the mankind, or the whole overall evolution of all of us, men, women equally. But we have written records of about 3,000 years to 5,000 years old. So we know that if something is written by then, if it is coming out as the system by then, it means it must have been prevalent and practiced way longer before that. And it was an oral tradition anyway. It came as a lineage. So you would talk about it, you would teach in your family. There were families who were Ayurvedic families, so it still goes on till date. So that is what it goes back, I would say, because if you look at it from evolution point of view, settlement or the agriculture is about 10,000 years old. That's when we started to settle. Before that, we were simply hunter-gatherers. So around that time, when we started to settle down, is when we started to talk about plants and herbs. And actually, women, because they had kids at that time, and they were the ones who were back in those settlements, while men would go out and hunt and do outside work. When women were pregnant and they couldn't do certain things, or they were looking after the little ones, is when they developed then growing some herbs and giving herbs and watching the nature and so on and so forth. That's how we have developed natural medicine.
So one of the fundamental premises of what we're doing is this. There's three things. First of all is, Socrates said something, many things very important, but one of the things he said was the unexamined life is not worth living. And then he also said, know thyself and you will know the gods and the universe and so on. So know thyself, meaning get to know who you are. And so in this episode of the Natural Medicine podcast, we're going to be talking about the physiological, the psychological elements, and the spiritual elements that make up who you are. But before we do that, a bit about yourself, Ashish. Do you want to share with our viewers, our listeners, your background in terms of the discipline you practice?
Absolutely. So I'm Doctor of Ayurvedic Medicine, which I explained. It's originated in Indian subcontinent thousands of years ago. And I also have learned herbal medicine, Western herbal medicine here in the UK. So I studied here, I did my master's. I'm also a practitioner of yoga. So dynamic yoga is my specialty in terms of yoga. And I am an NLP practitioner and a hypnosis master practitioner as well. So this is all my learning and my background. And right now I specialize in fertility. So I support women who are going through fertility issues, finding it difficult to get pregnant. And I also would look at their partners if they're willing to. So that's what I do.
Brilliant. And myself, Haroon Rabbani, I have been practicing functional medicine, but I've also, very importantly, I've been working in the field of working shadow work. So basically working with people's deepest, most traumas, because that has such a significant role to play in helping people transform not just their health, but their entire life. And it starts off there. And there's three key things to keep in mind. What we're aiming to do with yourself is, number one, is to help you to understand the root cause of whatever disease you have over the forthcoming episodes, getting to the root cause. What started off the disease, whether it be on a physiological level or a traumatic level? We want to explore that, or we want you to explore that. So that's the first thing. Second thing is for you to take responsibility. We're not here to say, hey, put a plaster over your cut and do nothing about it. No, if you're eating the wrong food, so my specialty is helping people with type 2 diabetes. Food and nutrition is massive for everybody, but particularly if you're suffering from a chronic disease, or any chronic disease, by the way,
Yeah.
including type 2 diabetes. So take responsibility. And the third element is say, okay, so some people get to a stage of poor health that they can no longer take responsibility because they're too sick. That's when we suggest you go for intervention, and we will
Yeah.
talk about various interventions. Now, before we go into, and this is, I know it's a build-up, but before we go into the body types, the constitutions, or doshas as it's actually known, I just want to share with you there's different stages of illness. So ultimately, which we don't want to get to, is the final stage. We will all die,
Yeah.
of course. The final stage of illness is your terminal stage. Before that is your symptomatic stage, meaning the symptoms have appeared. You can see, you can feel, you can measure
Mm.
that there's something wrong. But before that, this is very important, because that doesn't just appear from nowhere. Before that is your toxicity buildup and your systemic breakdown. So maybe your gut health has broken down and the toxins are starting to build up. Maybe you got leaky gut. So that's the third one before the very end. Before that, very important, especially if it's to do with chronic diseases, for sure, is your lifestyle choices.
Mm.
Are you someone who's sitting on your backside all day in front of a computer working in an office? Are you somebody who's a manual laborer? Are you somebody who's a couch potato? Are you somebody who over exercises, because there is such a thing? So your lifestyle choices, your habits that you make. Before that, your beliefs and your values and your insecurities that drive that. So we're talking about the mindset. What is the mindset that made you make those lifestyle choices? Before the mindset, very importantly, is, and you don't have to subscribe to this, I certainly do, is your spiritual pathway. So if you look, I'm writing a book, and I hope no one goes and shares this book. I'm not going to tell you the title of my book, but it's to do with the spiritual causes of type 2 diabetes. It's to do
Right.
with that. So what is going on the deep unconscious or the spiritual level that is getting you to develop disease? So if you look at all of that, here's where modern medicine is absolutely masterful at. If you're at the final stages of cancer, say for example, they've got medications and meditation. They haven't got meditations. They've got medications which will alleviate the pain leading up to death. So if you
Yeah.
got stage 4 cancer, a lot of them are often considered that this is going to be the end. They're very good at that. They're also very good at, if you have an accident,
Mm.
you break your leg, they're very good at that. But before that, if you've got chronic disease, there's no cure for chronic disease. If it's
Yeah.
lifestyle, there's no cure for it. So where functional medicine come in, and where Ayurvedic medicine and a lot of the holistic medicine come in, is actually at every single level. But where we're the masters at is understanding the toxicity level and things that build up to it, and how do you change the cause. So that's what it's about. So
Yeah.
having said all of that, please keep that in mind. There's different stages of disease, and depending on the stage is where you're going to start working on. So let's talk about the three doshas, or the body constitution. What's the first dosha you want to share?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned the stages, so I'm just going to pick up on that as
Yeah.
well. Because in Ayurvedic medicine, we have 6 stages of disease. So it starts from one. First is that doshas are collected. You feel a little bit like when I'm about to get cold, which I rarely get, is that I'll start to have some tingly feeling right at the back of my throat. And from that point, I know, okay, to capture it and so that it doesn't develop into a full cold. And then it has different stages. And then last stage is when it manifests fully. And the further stage is what is the pathogenesis, what is the prophylaxis of this, that what other uh, areas of your life or of your health is going to affect. So if I've got too much cold, I'll have headache, I might have vomiting, I might have abdominal pain as well. So there are 6 stages of any disease in Ayurveda. And it is actually very unique to Ayurvedic medicine because we don't have that in modern medicine. We don't see when the disease is just starting up, right? So like rheumatoid arthritis or other big diseases, they don't just start in a day. They've been building up for years and years and years. Same with cancer or any other condition. So that is where knowing yourself is the key. And I feel that modern medicine is really lacking in that. And people do not understand that they are very unique. Each one of us, the way everything about us is very unique and subjective to us. So one single paracetamol, which is just one kind of salt working on one mechanism, one pathway of the body, is only going to affect that pathway, regardless how the rest of you is. And that is why we have so many side effects of modern drugs, is because it's only working on one thing. Whereas if you take herbs, for example, one herb will work on every system of your body.
Yeah.
It will have one primary function, but it will still work on rest of your whole body because that's how holistic, it's wholesome. So to know that, you have to know who you are in your body, in your mind, what we call body and mind constitution. It's actually body and mind because your mind is, as you know, you always say it's no different. We are all connected.
Yeah.
And it comes from your spirit. For those who don't believe in spirit, you can believe in universal consciousness, you can believe in energy. We are manifestation of energy, because there comes a point when you give herbs, for example, to a patient, 2 people, same disease, same symptoms, you give one same herb to both and they react differently, right? Why? Because they are different people. So I will talk about more about doshas in relation to that. Is knowing, people need to know who they are. There is so much talk now we have about knowing ourselves, but all we are doing is knowing only our mind. That is where more discussion is about. I feel we don't talk much about how our body is doing and what is our predisposition, what are weaknesses, what are for example, you can talk about what are your weaknesses, what are you predisposed to, for example. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so the 3 doshas. I feel like I'm at the edge of my seat now. They go, come on, tell me about the 3 doshas.
Okay, so we have 3 what we call doshas. Dosha means fault. It is your present state, and most of us have a faulty present state. Even when you think that you are, very few people who have got very balanced mind, body, spirit, all of it is very balanced. So that is why they are called doshas, and there are 3 of them: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, right? And Vata, Pitta, Kapha, they come from 5 elements of the universe, right? You were talking about around 5 elements of the universe. So we have ether, air, fire, water, earth. Yeah. So from those 5 elements come 3 doshas. So for Vata, it's air and ether. For Pitta, it's fire and water. And for Kapha, it's earth and water. So those, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I'm just totally fascinated how this links into, in a very different way, to the psychological side. But we're going to talk about that in a moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So brilliant. So we have 3 doshas. Okay. So if somebody, obviously, for those of you who are watching and would like to find out your dosha type, because it's a bit more complex, and we're going to go into complexity in a moment. There'll be a link if you're watching the recording. There'll be a link for you to click and complete a questionnaire, and Dr. Ashish will respond to you, of course, letting you know your doshas. And if you're watching live, just come back to this later on and you will see that link. So the three types, can you share with us the key characteristics, the obvious ones for
Yeah.
each type, so people can say, okay, and it's not about totally pigeonholing you. It's understanding that there's certain attributes that you're going to have which are common to others, but the combination of them all, when you put everything together, the mental, the physical, spiritual,
Yeah.
it just makes you extremely unique. So please go
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, where else would you see these categorizations? So, can you think of anywhere else where we see these categorization, where we are, uh, profiling people? It is about profiling you. So we are seeing this profiling in terms of marketing. We are seeing this profiling in terms of recruiting now. People, where they talk about your weakness and your, how does your mind work and what kind of job is going to be suitable for you. It comes from your body and mind constitution, right?
ahead.
So Vata, for example, I'll give you a few characteristics of Vata. Vata is somebody who is, they have got a lot of nervous energy. Their nervous system is very active. So they're all up here. Yeah. Some of the Vata people, when you talk to them, you feel as if they don't touch the ground. They're just up in the air. They talk like that as well, that their talks are very inspirational. They're talking all airy stuff, that they want to do this and that and this, big ideas, but there's no ground to it. Yeah. They're very erratic. They talk very fast. They think very fast. They do things very fast. And that is why they have certain tendencies. For example, you will see more IBS because we know that gut and mind is related. So when mind is so erratic, it affects your gut. So more IBS kind of issues. When I see a patient who has got irritable bowel syndrome, I know that, okay, there is Vata which is playing up here. Of course, there might be Pitta as well if there is inflammation, but it is very characteristic of Vata people to have erratic bowel, erratic gut. Yeah. Erratic habits. They start, they stop, they like certain things, they don't like certain things. And they are very up and down. They have naturally, they are not they don't have bipolar disorder, but they are bipolar by nature, right? So they become elated really quickly. They're happy all of a sudden. And then when energy, because they're using so much energy in being so high, they lose that energy really quickly. So then they go really low. And you might see a Vata who's just then hiding and then, resting because they need to compensate for that energy. Sleep is disturbed. They are the lightest sleeper in the house is Vata, right? So they hear all the sounds because they're very sharp with the ears. So these are few characteristics which I would look for. Sleep is good one. Digestion is another one, and how they are thinking and behaving. As I mentioned the main ones. So this is. Can you think of people who are Vata-like?
Yeah. When I look at the mirror, I see this guy who's very Vata, like exactly actually how you described. And I also think of my dad, who's also like that. And he did develop IBS as well,
Yeah.
constantly in his head. I mean, thank God for meditation for me. Uh, and at the same time, lots of ideas, lots. I mean, try stopping the ideas. So absolutely, totally resonates with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're watching, just think about yourself. Is that you, or is that somebody family member, someone close?
Yeah.
And by the way, exploring how other people are also helps you to understand yourself as well. So
Yeah.
do in your head, ask yourself, who do I know who is similar to that? So okay, let's move on to the second one then.
So the second one is Pitta. Pitta means heat, literally just like fire. So they are fiery, they are passionate. You can look at their skin color will be more warmer. They are goal-oriented people. They have a set goal. That set goal may be for a year, for a day, for 2 years, for 5 years, but they have a set goal of something. and they're going to achieve, until they achieve that goal, they're not going to sit down. And they're very authoritative people because they have got so much fire in them, right? And they're very good with their gut. They can digest even stones. They have really good digestion. And their elimination is also really good. Sleep is kind of moderate. If they feel too hot, in hot environment, of course, their sleep is more disturbed. But their sleep is in between Vata and Kapha. So moderate sleepers, but they need their environment to be cooler. And they have more tendency towards heat, hot diseases. For example, you see people who have got, hot flushes or cheeks become really red. What we call it? I've forgotten the name.
Rosacea.
Rosacea. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a mismanagement of your Pitta. Yeah. So your Pitta is just coming and flushing out your skin. And then they will have more inflammation, any kind of inflammatory disease that you have, inflammatory bowel disease, for example. So there is a element of Pitta to them as well. For example, we know people who are very angry, they develop IBS or IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, because they're so angry. And when you're angry, there are certain hormones which raises in your bloodstream, and your liver becomes too hot. So all of this is interconnected. Okay. Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, we will talk about the combinations, because I also have a huge fire element.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. The question I'd ask is, do people, so how you just described the Pitta, that was more me probably for the first 30 years, 35 years of my life. And it's more Vata now than that. Do people switch, or do they have both and they move from one to the other?
So your constitution, when you feel the healthiest, and generally when babies are born, most of the babies are healthy, unless they have a genetic condition or some kind of condition that they are born with. So that we take as your healthy state, or your most healthiest state in your life, is what we take when your doshas are the most expressive, the way they want to express it. Yeah. But your basic constitution never changes.
Right.
And when you are closest to your basic constitution is when you are healthiest.
Right.
Right. So if you are Vata Pitta.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, tell me.
So that means then, say if I'm Vata Pitta, which is a combination, how I sleep, what I eat, my physical activities, all of them are determined, or the most optimal ones are actually determined by my dosha, my constitution. Is that correct?
It is correct. Absolutely. Everything that you do. So in combination, Vata Pitta, it also depends which one is more predominant than the other, right? Is it Vata Pitta or is it Pitta Vata? Okay. And that's where it becomes technical. That's where you have to understand over a period of time that how much Pitta and how much Vata you have, and how do you behave in a certain environment. Is it now Pitta behaving, or is it now Vata behaving out of your constitution? Yeah. Of course, we have all the doshas, but it is what is predominant in your body, what is making the most action.
So that brings up an interesting question for me, which is to say, how the heck does a medical expert even find out, or the nutrition expert find out, what is the right food for you to eat and not to eat?
Yeah.
Particularly if they don't know your constitution.
They can't. And that is why there's so much mismatch, right? Because when you look at, I think functional medicine is getting closer, but because they do not have that foundation of Ayurvedic medicine, it is coming closer from a nutritional point of view. Okay. So you have, say, for example, you have chilies. Yeah. And chilies is a very heating food, or heating spice. So anybody who is hot by nature should have less spices, should have less chilies. But from functional medicine point of view, they are not going to recommend either way, whether you should take less or more of, because they do not have the concept of cold and hot foods. it is only very unique to Ayurvedic medicine. I'm sure it is with Chinese medicine as well, is that you have this concept of every food is either hot or cold, and there are degrees of hot and coldness.
Which, by the way, just for those of you interested, thinking, how the heck is this related to even emotions? And I tell you, classic example, very, very important example. So we had this year, 2022, at the time of recording, we had a major heat wave in the UK and, in fact, all over Europe. And you will find during heat waves, temperatures rise also. Sorry, temperatures rise, tempers rise. What am I talking about? So temperature rises and temper rises. In other words, people have a more tendency to get aggravated, and the ones who are going to get more aggravated, of course, are the ones who are already fiery.
Yeah.
So there is no separation between your mind and your body. It's one, and also there's no separation from the environment, because if the environment is going to aggravate certain conditions, it's going to affect your mind as well. So that's fascinating so far. Okay, let's talk about the third dosha,
the Kapha.
Kapha.
So yeah, that's one of my doshas. Kapha is because it has earth and water element, so it is very heavy, stable, steady. They like routine. They like regimented schedules. They are the people who make lists for every single thing. They are the people who will stay in a job for years and years because they like that kind of consistency. They are the people who are very dependable. The most dependable friend in a group or most dependable person in the family will have more kapha. And kapha is like phlegm. It combines everything. It joins everything. So that is the quality of kapha. So digestion is a little bit slower. They retain whatever they eat or whatever they absorb, whatever thoughts they have, they retain it. That's why the size will be slightly bigger or bigger than the rest of siblings or the rest of the family. And they sleep really deep. I sleep really deep. You can take me to another house. Once I'm asleep, I'm like dead. So that their elimination is really good. Tendency towards more edema, because they do have a lot of water content, so they have more tendency towards edema. They more have tendency towards depression because they feel heavier. So whenever the emotions become like that, or they have eaten too much food, they become heavier, mentally as well as body wise.
So with a kapha person then, because I'm aware of quite a few kapha people, because a lot of people with type 2 diabetes happen to be kapha. I don't know if it's exclusively kapha. That'd be interesting to know, actually. Should get all my clients to get tested by yourself.
You should.
And by the way, if you're one of my clients, type 2 diabetes, make sure you do the dosha quiz and let me know. And obviously, you can let Ashish know as well. Let me know what you are. I'd be fascinated to know what percentage of people are actually that. So, are there any foods? Let's talk about foods, because just keeping it basic for now, and we can go deeper in detail, maybe either in this episode or maybe another episode.
Yeah.
Starting off with kapha, since we're already there, are there any particular foods, number one, to avoid like the plague, and number two, to go towards?
Right. So because they are heavy, they have a lot of water content and they have a lot of earth content. So foods which are heavy and cold, they should avoid them. Yeah. They need to have food which is warm, which has got a lot of spices, and which is more drying rather than more moist. So more moist foods, for example, a lot of cheese, bread. That is why they will have issues with bread, which is going to sit on their system, or pastas and wheat. So the foods that they should be eating are the warm and dry foods.
So warm, but not soups, or they can eat soups?
They can have soups, but they need to have the spices in that. So they can have good amount of spices because they have got so much heaviness that comes from being phlegmatic, being more water content. They need to cut through that heaviness with the warmth of the spice.
So basically, don't eat boring food, eat Indian food. That's what I'm really trying to say. Okay, okay, so and what about stuff like salads? I mean, would that be useful for someone who's kapha or not?
Salads will be very cold for them. So if they want to have salads, it will be at room temperature. And salads should be with black pepper, or you add some nut oil to it, or you add some warming oil to it. So it becomes a little warmer for your system to digest. Otherwise, if you're having cold salad in winter and you are kapha, is going to give you indigestion. You're going to have more wind. You're going to fart more. You're going to have indigestion. So you see the link?
Yes. Wow. Okay. So you having more wind isn't enough of a description. We had to tell you you fart more. So okay. So how about Pita? You mentioned spices, etc. But what foods to aim towards and what kind of foods to avoid?
Uh, right. So foods which are hot, temperature wise, when you have cooked any meal, then let it cool down, slightly cool down, rather than eating it really hot, because some people have habit of eating really hot food. So if you are a pitta person, then let the air, blow out a bit and then eat it. But you need foods which are more moist, because you need that moistness, because you already have so much fire which is burning
Mm,
inside you. So you're going to need moist foods, and you're going to need cooling foods.
mm.
But not Ayurveda does not have concept of like iced foods, right? So
Right.
cooling foods is something which is room temperature food. It is not food from the fridge, because we didn't used to have fridges then. So it is cooling food at room temperature.
Right. Cooling foods. Are you talking about stuff like cucumber and?
Salads, cucumbers with more water content, because it will help with their fire that they have.
So what you don't want to. So in essence, what I'm hearing is, if you're a fire person, what you don't want to do is have more fiery foods. You want to go the
Exactly. Yeah.
opposite direction. I
Yeah.
presume it's the same for everything else. Okay. So
So they can have something like milk, milk products, cheese. They can have plenty of that, because it is helping them to calm their pitta down.
mm,
The hotness that they have, it will help them to cool. And plus, because their appetite is so good,
mm,
they need more substance to eat.
right, right. And when I'm hearing you, I'm also thinking of all the scientific research papers done across the board with nutrition and exercise and etc.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult to give somebody a cookie cut formula and say, here you go, here's what your nutrition should be. Um, and even as I'm hearing you also, even if someone knows their doshas, is to say, here you go, this is unique to you. No, it's never going to be, it has to be even. This is where the like the therapy, the consultation is important. This is where monitoring, measuring how your body is responding. And Gandhi did this, really eloquently, which was he kept a diary of everything that he ate and everything that and if he was going to change anything, he'll change one variable at a time and notice how his body adapts to that situation. So, and you got a lifetime ahead of you, you've got a lifetime behind you. Certain foods, in fact, one of my sons, he's actually getting diarrhea and he couldn't understand it. And I said, okay, well, first thing was, um, are you drinking milk? Because he's more Vata, I think. Are you drinking milk? He goes, yeah. What about any of the dairy products, cheese, etc.? He says, oh, I don't think it's the milk. So I said, okay, stop drinking milk for a while and notice. And the following week, he did it for a while. The following week, he had a milkshake. Following day, he had the diarrhea again.
Yeah.
So it's only by experimenting bit by bit over time that you realize that certain things are just not serving you. So all that you read on the internet or watch on social media videos like TikTok that I'm on as well, and Ashish is on as well, all that you read, take everything with a pinch of salt. Make sure you test it on yourself. Okay, so finally, Vata people, what should they be avoiding and what should they um, eat more of potentially?
So they should not be eating cold raw foods.
Right.
So anybody who is vata, and trying to be raw vegan, it is not going to work out. Gut is going to be, and I know a friend of mine who did that years ago, and she was suffering like anything, diarrhea and indigestion and bloating, so much bloating because she was so vata and was trying to be raw vegan, which is cold food all the time. So cold, dry foods, no. You need warm, moist foods for you, and you need foods which has warm, moist foods and more spices. You can eat more spices, but not excessive, because vata also gets hyper with too much spice as well. So if it is too much heat, that is also going to make your vata really high as well. Yeah, it's like giving fire to the wind, or wind to the fire as well. So they fire each other.
So in essence, what I'm hearing is leave all the exciting foods for the Kapha people. I get it. And I feel a bit
And
disappointed.
pitta.
And the Pita can handle some of the spicy as well, but just not so much chilies. Okay, so is there? We already covered obviously earlier on that yes, there can be combinations of each one. Can you have combinations of all three at all? Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. It is much rarer. Generally, one or two doshas are going to be more predominant. Third one is minimal. Even when people do, I've done hundreds and thousands of body mind constitution, dosha constitution assessments now, and I have not seen. I wouldn't say it's minuscule. Not even in 1%. We are talking about.
Mm.
So it is mainly combination. You could be vata pitta or vata kapha or pitta kapha, and then single ones where one dosha is really predominant. Generally, what happens is if you have one dosha, you see someone and you see this person is totally vata, is generally when vata is out of hand. So they are having excessive of that particular dosha, and the other dosha is not nowhere to be seen for now because it is in vitiated state. It is not in a healthy state. So generally, there are two of them.
So we're running out of time. I mean, already in the first this particular episode, one of the areas that I would love for us to jump into, not today, is understanding the importance of your mind and your mind constitution as well. So we'll talk about something called the vitality test, which is something that I think is absolute genius, developed by a genius friend of mine, actually. And it's a free online test. We'll talk about that in another episode. But in the meantime, is there anything you want to say about the state of the mind and the mind constitutions with the three? You've already touched upon it, I know, but just a bit more clarity about the three different doshas.
Absolutely. So vata is where mind is racy, right? It is constantly jumping from one to the other to the other. So vata person would be really, it will be terrible for them to have a desk job, for example. Yeah. Because for them, job will be where they can move around, where they can wander around, they can go in and out, they're doing exciting projects because they get bored really. And somebody who's vata, or they don't have any mindfulness in around them, they can get really bored really quickly. So that is their tendency, and it comes from, there are some people when they say, I don't even know why I said what I said. They just don't know. They just say or blurt out things or do certain actions in the moment, and afterwards they're thinking, why did I do that? That is vata, because vata is just so on the spot of the moment that you don't even know how you are behaving like that. That is their mental constitution. They are, in a way, we can call that they're fickle, they're superficial, because they go from one to next thing so quickly. You may feel that they do not have that kind of stability or depth. So that is how then their mind also behaves that way.
So how would someone like that stabilize themselves?
By knowing their constitution, what we are talking about. That's
Yeah.
one thing. They need to know. They need to know, which is, again, for all of us, we need to know where our boundary is. How far can I make myself crazy? How much pasta can I eat at night? How much potatoes can I eat? How much milk can I drink? For example, I know I can't drink even half a cup of milk. It doesn't suit me anymore. But that is what it is, knowing about your body and mind and body constitution and your mental constitution as well. That can I afford to become this crazy? Can I afford to become this mad about, or I don't know, so angry about something? For Pitta person, it would be. But we need to know our limits, and that is where the constitution comes really handy.
So really what I'm hearing is, and I understand it completely, of course, is that the stuff that goes into your mouth has a direct impact of what comes out of your mouth, particularly if you're Vata person. So stuff going into your mouth has an impact on what comes out of your mouth, and what comes out of your mouth and into your head, meaning your thoughts.
Yeah,
So this is where you practice true mindfulness.
yeah,
Is okay, I'm a Vata person. Pay attention to when you're jumping from one idea to the other. Just notice what happens. That's the start.
yeah.
Forget about changing, just notice it. And when you realize that certain things are serving you and other things make you, how can I say, make some bad decisions and bad choices, then
Yeah.
shifts will happen long term. So it's
The,
about
the
totally.
thing is, the thing is that most people know this by trial and error, but they know it by the time they have made lots of mistakes. Most of the people then know, okay, when you're 40, 50, you know that these things don't suit you or these things suit you. But that is long time to waste in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah. You probably lost many opportunities. You lost perhaps a lot of your health, your mind. What if we are teaching this to our children? For example, I'm a practitioner, my twins, they know their constitution, I know their constitution, I know how to handle their moods differently because they have different constitutions.
Wow. So it affects your moods as well.
Ab- Absolutely, of course it is. I know what constitution my son is and what constitution my daughter is, and how to then talk to them, to slightly perhaps change my tone. That is how, that is where it becomes so interesting, when we know about somebody's constitution and their mind, how their mind is working.
So in essence, you knowing your constitution and that of the loved ones, people in your life,
Yeah,
also mean it impacts on your relationship directly. That's
big, big. There
okay.
are practitioners who are doing Ayurvedic matchmaking
Oh wow. 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 And
and,
it makes sense to me.
and recruiting.
And recruiting. Wow.
Yeah.
So in essence, if somebody is fire energy, and I think of my father, don't give him chilies in his food. Don't make it too spicy. He actually has a weird diet, but he has cut down his chilies.
Also, also, in addition to that, don't give them chilies. Don't put them in a room which has got red walls, right?
Wow.
So
Because
your environment affects the colors that you choose in your life.
wow, that's amazing. So okay, so let's talk about Pitta energy a bit more, and the so you talked about the Vata energy and how their mind operates. What about the Pitta energy? How does that person's mind operate?
So Pitta is somebody who is obviously very fiery. So if they don't get what they want, they are going to get very resentful very quickly. That is their energy. They are very, all they can see is their target. Okay. So people who are, for example, in sales team, person who is hitting the target most likely is going to be more Pitta than the others, because that person can only see the target. They don't really care about anybody else or anybody's targets. They know that they need to achieve that. And when you are so focused and targeted on one thing, that also means that you will offend people. You will come across as that you don't care about others because you are focused on your target, right? So that is Pitta's energy.
That explains why I was number one in medical sales, and a lot of people were still pissed off with me, including my managers. They're like, oh, "What's your problem?" I'm like, "Number one for your company." I'm getting in the most amount of sales. Oh my goodness! Why the heck weren't you in my life 30 years ago? Never mind. Okay, so
Yeah.
do Pitta people also Pitta? I'm making it sound like an English word. It's not English. By the way, it's not chakra. It's chakra. For anyone, we're going to talk about chakras another
It's
time.
Pitta.
Chakra, right? No, and Pitta, not Peter.
No,
It's
it's not Pitta bread.
yeah, not Peter bread or Peter. So Pitta people, do they tend to be social, or is that
They are very social. Yeah.
right? Okay.
So Vata person will start a project, an idea. Pitta is the one who's going to execute it. Yeah. Make sure that it actually happens. And Kapha is the one who's going to organize the things behind the scenes.
Right. Okay. And they're the nurturers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of the mindset, the mind of a Kapha person, how does that look like?
So mind of a Kapha person is that they kind of, you can feel that they are a bit slow because they are nurturers, they are carers, they tend to be happy go, easy going people. They're happy if they get something. They don't mind if you don't, you give them food like in the queue, you tell them to have food in the end, or they are a little bit more gentler, you could say. But that also means that they don't have that kind of defined boundaries. People can then push them, um, out of which they will also feel more sad and depressed, right? So Pitta will be resentful and they will feel angry, and Kapha will feel sad and depressed that, oh, something happened with them, and then they couldn't do anything because that's their nature. They're sometimes too kind.
What about the Vata, by the way? Well, what's the emotions that Vata tend to have?
So ask me in a different way because I'm
Okay, so a Kapha person would get sad and depressed if they don't get their
oh,
own.
so Vata will get more bipolar, right? So they can get very hyper, and
Ah,
then they will get into this moods. They will have the swings.
okay, mood swings. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That is absolutely fascinating. For those of you who are watching the replay, click on the link and get your dosha figured out. And for those of you watching it live, thank you for joining. By the way, make sure you come back in a few minutes because I'll put up the link shortly. But here's what I'd like to say is this is the first episode.
I was thinking that we have so much time, but
No,
I've
50,
started.
52 minutes into it. This is just the first episode, and we only gave you a little glimpse.
Yeah.
And let me remind you, number one, or let us remind you, number one, there's only one of you in the universe. Well, 420 billion people, if there was that many people ever, there's
Yeah.
only one of you. Okay. And then when you look at yourself, just recognize that there's such a uniqueness about you. You've got to treat yourself not in a generalized kind of way,
Yeah.
but in a very specific way linked to your doshas, linked to your constitution, your mind, your body. So the truth is that nobody will know you enough other than yourself. The only person who will ever, even with, I'm guessing, I'm saying the right, I'm not out of terms, but saying, Ashish, that even as an Ayurvedic doctor, you can only get an insight with the tests for yourself to get to know someone, but really to get to know the only person who can really get to know yourself is you. So do the various tests. It's all free. You're not being charged. And good evening, Mira, who's commenting to us, Dr. Ashish and Harun. By the way, we're doing our shows live. And I've kind of like feel like we should do it on Tuesdays, but we can figure this out Monday or Tuesday. We'll figure it out. But the point is this: if you have questions pertaining to your health condition,
Yeah.
whether it be an autoimmune disease, a chronic disease, whatever it is, make sure you comment below or in any of our future episodes, comment below and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you share, because you know what? If you, it's breaking my heart because I was dealing with a client who has cancer and she's done very well and she's been told she's got a certain amount of time to live. And I said, don't believe it for a second.
Yeah.
Who the hell is anybody to tell you how long you're going to live or when you're going to die, etc.? You know,
Yeah.
nobody's going to be able to give you that answer. But what makes me sad is there's so many good people out there. There's some naughty people as well, but there's a lot of good people out there with conditions that could have been prevented with the right education. So
Yeah.
if you have a child, if you have a grandchild, if you have a mother, if you're a father, if you're born of a man or a woman, meaning you're a human, then make sure you subscribe, make sure you share, make sure you hang out with us, both here and on Spotify and Apple Music as well. So that's going to be available from tomorrow. So make sure you listen, make sure you share, because we're going to cover a lot of topics, and it's up to you. It's listener led, viewer led. It's up to you. If you've got a disease that you say, okay, please help us here. Now, although Dr. Ashish specializes in fertility, she's got a vast array of experiences. Although I specialize in diabetes, they're the people who pay me money for doing stuff. I actually have massive experiences. And when you get to the root cause of why you are where you are,
Yeah.
then you can start changing those things that are causing you to be sick, so that instead of causing you to be sick, you can inculcate, bring into your life habits, rituals, thoughts, mindset, food, activities that will give you a healthy life, so that everyone deserves to be happy and free. So is there any final comment you want to make before we end this first episode?
I really enjoyed this, and I think we need to revisit, or maybe I don't know, next one, or at some point in a few weeks, we should go into another angle of doshas,
Yeah.
or understanding your body and mind constitution, because it is the base of who you are as a person, and to understand that, okay, even if you're taking modern drug medicine, then how is it affecting your body and your mind? Right,
Yeah.
you need to know that how paracetamol is affecting you, or any other hormones is affecting women who are taking hormones. So understand that you are really unique, and understand that there is, your system works only your way, and to know that there is, um, the medicines, the drugs, especially the drug medicines that you're taking, you can counterbalance them with natural solutions, natural herbs, natural therapies, all the things that we are going to discuss about. So keep listening.
Brilliant. Ashish, thank you so much. This has been brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you share, make sure you love, like, and whatever, and comment. Definitely. We'll
Yes.
respond as much as we can. And we will see you next week. If you register with us throughout the usual social media or get in touch with us, you'll be able to subscribe very shortly, and we'll keep you informed. But the next week, we're going to go to another deep dive into another big issue that may just help transform your life. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.